All right.
Everyone can hear. So welcome. Thank you for making the time to speak with us. I was telling everyone, and for those who just joined, I'm at a Jasper Johns press event, and I'm writing a book about him, so I didn't want to miss this event. So this is why we have this beautiful work of art behind me. So we had a student is going to read your bio, and then two other students will kind of take over the discussion, ask whatever questions they have prepared or have currently or in the moment. We're talking about cover letters, LinkedIn, why do we bother, how do we make it catchy? And I will let whoever is reading the bio, I think it was Emmanuel, is going to read the bio.
Yep.
All right, take it away.
Robert J. Choi began his career at the Central Intelligence Agency, working on cultural change in elite military and training organizations around the world. In 2009, he founded RJC and Company Transformation Engineers, a management consultancy that facilitates large-scale change management in private and public sectors, including Fortune 500 companies and leading nonprofits. In 2020, Mr. Choi joined the Metropolitan Transportation Authority as deputy head. In this executive role, he oversees MTA-wide HR operations and analytics and manages the $1.5 billion annual spend for the MTA's Business Service Center and Center for Excellence. Mr. Choi holds a BA in Political Science from Columbia University and an MA in Political Science and Government from the Johns Hopkins University, where he focused on international affairs. His professional passion is to use what he's learned to help organizations become better and smarter.
All right. Thank you for that. I guess that's my cue, right?
It's all yours. Yeah, if you'd like to
Well,
tell us more about yourself.
Thank you, Matt, for inviting me. I'm happy to serve. I'm happy to chat a little bit about recruitment, HR, and resume and cover letter tips. I have a presentation set up, and I think I can just probably, if nobody minds, I can just go ahead and share my screen. So I don't. Thank you for that introduction. By the way, Emmanuel, I don't have any additions to that. It was pretty thorough. The only thing I would add is that I'm very happy to be working at the MTA right now. I'm sure. I mean, I've been a lifelong New Yorker, first of all, so I know that people have sometimes strong opinions of the MTA, but I happen to love it. I happen to love New York City and love New York, so it's really a pleasure to be working there. All right, so everybody, can you see my screen or the screen share?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I wanted to focus on the topic at hand a little bit for a few minutes first, and that is writing your cover letters and resumes. But as you'll hear in a couple of slides, I think absolutely follow the wisdom that's out there about being authentic, about writing in a way that's true to yourself, that reflects your background accurately, telling a story about overcoming triumphs. All of that is great information, but I have a bit of a spin and a different take on it. And it includes the fact that we all live in a digital age, and and people hire in this digital age. And increasingly what you will find is that companies big and small, governments and also in all sectors really, you'll find the use of AI and other technologies to facilitate getting a job. So with that, I want to show you some information here. You'll see that the mean vacancy duration, that means how long a job is open, is different. It ranges from about 3 weeks to a little bit over a month or two. And that is the time between when a employer posts a job and when the person walks through the door. Now, this is a mean, which means, obviously that, some are quite quicker, some are quite longer. And in my personal experience, I would say that it takes about 3 months between posting to walking in the door as an employee. And there is a reason why I'm sharing this. I know this is a writing lab, but there is a reason why I'm sharing this. On the other side, you'll see the interview process. And here you'll see there's a little more color to that whole time to fill statistic, because including the interviews, you might find yourself, aligned to my experience, which is, 2, 3, 4 months between the time the posting is available to the public and the time that you get hired and walk through the door. And I will say with that also that when the posting is public, is made public, that doesn't mean that necessarily, and this is a kind of a inside tip, it doesn't mean that that job is necessarily available, because often what you'll find with human resources departments is that they post internally, someone is already selected or there's a kind of a short list. When they post it, there's already kind of somebody in mind. So all that to say, don't get discouraged by this process. It does take a long time. Don't take it personally. When you start looking for a job, or if you already started to look for a job, just remember that it's a complex process, the recruitment process. It involves a lot of people wherever it is, public, private sector. So don't take any of it personally, and just do the best you can, obviously. And with that, my first tip is in terms of preparing yourself to present yourself to the employer. Don't ask for anything that's not, don't provide, sorry, anything that's not asked for. Meaning, if you're applying for a job teaching, don't, go off into tangents about how you love to play soccer or something like that. Stay on message. Don't talk about, things that aren't relevant to the job. If for example, you look at the job description and some of those requirements and preferred qualifications that you see are not a fit for you, volume doesn't make up for compatibility. So sometimes I see situations where the person is not qualified, but they put a lot of writing and fluff into the application in order to, hope for a match, and that somebody will see how great they are otherwise, and maybe give them a chance. But I will say that don't waste your time. That's not really the way it works. It's about matching a person's skill set to the skill sets that are needed for a particular position. So that's number one. Number two is leverage crowd wisdom, which is something I already touched on. Google, you can Google anything I'm saying. You can Google. That's kind of like the way of the world. I often say that my best friend's name is Google, because I always ask Google for advice. But social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, leverage those things. And what do I mean by it when I say leverage? It means not necessarily to blindly follow or post or look at, but really try to get some insights into employers that are hiring, and tailor your writing and your resume to match, what folks are looking for. So for example, if a company is looking for engineers, you can, and they advertise that, you can safely assume that there's a need for a cadre of engineers in their employee population group. So you would want to talk about, how you love engineering, how you were the captain of the engineering club in your high school, and put that out on your social media as well. So you get that. So it's a two-way street, right? You get that intelligence from the social media, but you also put it out there, and you write and tailor your skill sets and your experiences to what's being advertised and what's out there on social media. So that's number one. Two, in terms of leveraging crowd wisdom, it's format appropriately. And there's a couple of reasons why. If you put crazy graphics and tables and different fonts and all of that, the AI is not going to pick you up, and modern applicant tracking systems are going to ignore you. So, don't put flowers and, weird colors on there, because all of that is formatting data, and it could screw up your match, actually. So, and sometimes there are exceptions in terms of if you're applying to be, an associate at an ad agency, and they want to show you, they want you to show your creativity. But typically, even with those positions, they will ask for, again, if you recall number one, they will ask you for a portfolio of your creative work. And when they ask for that, you provide it to them, but don't put it in your resume. Don't think of your resume as a canvas to show how creative you are necessarily, unless they're asking you to do that. So format appropriately. The advice I would give is use the same font, use the same font size, use standard black font color, and keep that consistent all throughout. So what do I mean by all throughout? On your social media, on your resume, on your cover letter, make sure they all look similar, if to the extent that you have control over it. And make sure that they all have the same messaging. Because, for example, if you write on your cover letter, how you love government and politics, and then on your Facebook or LinkedIn, it doesn't say anything about government or politics, and it says you've written a paragraph about how you're passionate about veganism, then which is fine, but it doesn't align if that's the message that you want to send out to the world. So along those lines, highlight the achievements in your resume. A resume is, and this is part of crowd wisdom as well, a resume is not an opportunity for you to tell an employer what a wonderful person you are overall, and that your mom likes you and all of that. What happened here? Let me try that again. Difficulties. Okay. So what's going on here? What's that? Sorry about that. So it's not an opportunity to tell the world what a great person you are, how your mom loves you, how your dog loves you, to give you a shot. It's about what you've achieved in your work experience and in the positions that you've held, particularly if at any level, this is as, a server in a bar, or a manager, or even an executive. You've got to show how the responsibility you've been given is, how you've sort of took that and ran with it, and were effective. And that means listing the outcomes, not necessarily I read 50 emails a day and I responded to them, but write about, if that's what you did as part of your job, what outcome did that produce? And everything in the resume should be about outcomes. What did you achieve? Not necessarily what you did, unless that's what they're asking for. So it's, write about your achievements, your outcomes, not, fluff. I would also say customize your resume. Now there's two sides to this. So the first side is the more jobs you apply for, the more likely the more likely you are to get hired by one employer. However, it's to the extent possible, you should customize your resume for each job description. Now, the strategy I would recommend there is you have a resume and cover letter. If a cover letter is asked for, and we'll get into that in a minute, but all of that should be customized to a particular job description, but you can use that same writing as a template for similar jobs so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you're applying to a job in a particular industry. Let's say, you're a graphic designer or, something like that, and you want to apply to be a graphic designer in, the financial industry services sector. You could use that same set of writing as a template for all of those jobs. But if you're also applying to be a graphic designer in, I don't know, the food industry, then you would have to rewrite and customize to that particular industry. So pick a level at which you can customize, but also not drive yourself insane by trying to, respond to every single thing in every job posting. Also sound like yourself, if you put in some of your personality, your style, but, obviously follow the rules of proper grammar. Don't use, slang or anything like that, unless, unless you do that very strategically in a way that hits the right tone. But generally speaking, sound like yourself. Don't be overly robotic in your writing or overly professional in your writing. Some people, go out, get on that train and they ride that train all the way off the tracks. Have a little personality, but, also have basic grammar and syntax and all of that I'm sure that you're learning in these classes and you've learned elsewhere as well. So like I said before, align your tone, your writing with your skill set. So for example, what that means in my mind is, if you're applying for a particular role in, I don't know, let's say a computer specialist, you will want to sound like somebody who understands programming language in your writing. So you want to talk about natural language processing. You want to talk about syntax. You want to talk about linguistics, all of that. And that, there's a certain style to that versus when, if you were applying to be a bartender somewhere, you would want to sound very different in those two different, kinds of roles. Sound like yourself, but, try to, again, customize it to the extent possible without being phony. Because you're going to have, if you get the job, you can't, you're going to show up there. You're going to stop working. It's not going to be somebody else. So, or your other profile, or your other person that you were writing like, if it wasn't yourself. Okay, so last thing, I think this is the most important thing, understand technology. So if you forget everything I've said today, or you don't hear it, this is the one point I would recommend you heed, which is make your resume and cover letter bot friendly, robot friendly, because those are the stage keepers. And I know, it's paradoxical a little bit because you do want to show your personality and be authentic and all of those things. But the first quote unquote person that's going to read your resume is going to be a robot. So structure a resume to meet the requirements of an applicant tracking system in order to get it to a human. A human will read it eventually, and a set of humans will read it. But first, it's got to get through the artificial intelligence and the keyword searching that will happen. So along with that, again, this harkens back to the point about formatting. Think about the order in which you write your achievements and your jobs, if you have previous work experience. list the work experience, the company name, job location, your title, start and end dates, and make that consistent throughout your entire resume. Because if you format each job differently, for example, if you put the location first in one job and the title of your title in the position on the same resume for another job, the bot might not recognize what you're trying to say, even though those two jobs may be related. So structure your resume consistently, write it consistently, and use the use a consistent format. Optimize keywords, in your resume and cover letter. Make sure they align again. If you're applying for a job, whatever, as a police officer, as a government employee, as a train operator, talk about the thing, use words that describe those positions. And just to underscore that point, use synonyms for the same skill. So if you want to talk about creativity, say innovation, say divergent thinking, say EQ, say all of those things in different, which describe essentially the same thing, but use synonyms for those things, and you have a lot better chance of getting through the initial screening. Because a human probably won't look, unless it's a very small company, that looks like every resume, it will go through an applicant tracking system. So another example, if you are a programmer or a coder, you want to say programmer, you want to say developer, you want to say engineer, you want to use all of those words throughout your writing. And also, I would say prioritize relevant keywords. So, most job descriptions have more than one kind of requirement or preferred qualifications, but, look at, for example, the preferred qualifications, because those are the preferred ones. And if you meet any of those qualifications, prioritize those keywords, because that will bring you higher in the list on the match. And that's it. That's all I got. I guess I don't know how much time we have left, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I gave Matt the sources from which I'm working, so you can look at it on your own. Yeah, happy to answer questions.
Great. I'll stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
Let's
Oh,
see.
how do I do that? Here we go.
Oh, I did it. Okay. Beat you to it. Thank you so much for that information and insight. I believe Anthony had some questions, or he was going to facilitate some prepared questions for you. Assuming that you have time.
I do.
You can, when you got to run, just let us know. But Anthony, would you like to, I think you could probably skip the icebreaker question unless you wanted to ask it. I'm kind of curious myself.
Yeah, I want to start it off, just to get off on the right foot and then introduce myself. My name is Anthony, and I'm happy to meet you. Thank you for the information you provided so far.
I hope it was helpful. I don't know.
Very helpful. Very helpful.
I was talking left, but hopefully it was aligned to what you were hoping to get in terms of the information.
So thank you for that. And then my first first question would be, what is the most interesting subway line within the MTA in your opinion?
That's a funny question. I can't pick a favorite. It's like picking your favorite child. But I will tell you that I've used the A train and the 1 train a lot in my life. So those are the lines that I have. The red line and the blue line are the ones that I have most experience with. Unfortunately, I don't make it to Brooklyn, so I'm I don't think I think in my entire lifetime, and I was born and raised in Manhattan, I've only taken the L maybe 2 times. So I'm not familiar with it. No disrespect to Brooklyn, but I just haven't used that particular subway line.
Pretty understandable. Okay. And then the next question I have for you is when and why did you sign up for LinkedIn, and has it been useful throughout your career?
Yes, and I will tell you why. As a user of LinkedIn, you get to fill out your profile. You know, you list stuff about hopefully your achievements, as I was saying. But the recruiters and the employers, they use it differently. They use it to post their jobs and also to screen resumes and also to find matches, right? So it's a complex web of systems, but you are more likely to get noticed, for example, because most employers, they use LinkedIn, they use an applicant tracking system, they use Monster, they use all of those things with multiple sources, right? So if you, for example, go on to an employer website and you apply to a job and they have LinkedIn and you both, and that matches, if your application matches to what information they have from LinkedIn, that is more likely to get you higher in the rankings if it's consistent, right? So if LinkedIn says you're a match, the applicant tracking system says you're a match, you're more likely to get higher on the list. So I would say it doesn't hurt. It doesn't take a long time. You know, you do want to make it a little more generic in terms of your grand achievements, because you can't, you know, tailor your LinkedIn profile for every job that you're applying to. But I would say it is important for the recruiters and just to be out there. And by the way, all of these systems are there to help help recruiters. These are not, oh, by the way, my views do not reflect the opinion of the MTA. They are my own personal opinions and my opinions alone. So the systems are there to help recruiters, right? Match jobs for the positions they have open. They want you to have a good experience. They want to find great candidates as well, but it's essentially to help the recruiters do those things. And it's not necessarily to make the user, you know, happy, quite frankly. It's there to do a job, and it does it very effectively. And you know, every employer hopes that you have a good experience, but that's not necessarily the first thing that people are thinking about all the time.
Okay, thank you for that information. Thank you. So so another question I have for you, you know, being with the pandemic going on and all that like kind of crazy information going on, what would you say, what jobs will be most in demand in 2023, and what kind of work study experience would you be needed?
Pretty easy question to answer. They're going to be computer science jobs. They're going to be programming jobs. Um, uh, Anything to do with artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence actually is there's no commonly accepted definition of it yet. We're still trying to figure it out. So included in our, you know, if you just do a Google, if you ask my friend Google, they'll tell you that artificial intelligence includes linguistics, it includes programming, it also includes sociology, psychology. So, you know, if you add those kind of related fields of study with programming, with a computer science course, I think, you know, that's a win-win. So anything in technology, particularly with AI, is going to be important. But I will also say, as we found out during the pandemic, you know, all of those first line jobs, they're also probably hiring more now if we're talking about 2021, 2022. So those are out there as well. You know, delivery folks, hostesses, receptionists, you know, train operators, bus operators, all of those folks and jobs. I mean, all of those jobs are are out there due to the need that's caused by the pandemic.
Okay. I see like where you're getting with that. So thank you for that. My last question for you is, in your final year of undergrad, what do you wish you knew about getting a job?
I will say that it's not too early to start applying. I did my first internship when I was a rising junior, so pretty much when I was a sophomore. That internship was with the CIA, so that's where I eventually got a full-time job. So as a sophomore, I was looking for a job, pretty much in the form of an internship. And internships I would consider them jobs. They're just different in length. So I would treat them like jobs, and I did. So I started to look for an internship in my sophomore year. Frankly, I was starting to look even in my freshman year, but it's never too early to start. And it helps. And one of the reasons why that is, it's because it helps you start to figure out what you want to do and where you want to work. It forces you to ask yourself that question, if you're looking, for an internship, and you start to ask, you look at the company website, company information, and you say, is this someplace I really want to work? Is this something I really want to do? You ask yourselves those kinds of questions, and it helps. And the earlier you start, the more likely it is that you'll find a good place that fits your interests.
Okay. Thank you for that, because I'm also a rising junior, so I'm trying to get my feet wet and what I want to do. But that information is very helpful. Thank you for that.
Sure, absolutely.
So there's one question I see on the list that I'm curious about. A student asks, what should I write about if I don't have any work experience?
I would say write about how you meet the required skills and preferred skills that are listed in the job description. So first, make sure that you do meet the required skills. Don't ignore those, but you have to match your level of experience with, the level of the job. So if you don't have any work experience, that means you're looking for entry-level work or entry-level positions. Usually those are coordinators, associates, analysts, those kinds of things. You might find those titles in entry-level jobs, or the job description may in fact say this is an entry-level position. So I would look at the requirements in the job description and write about how you meet those requirements, even if it's not with particular experience. So for example, if a job is asking for, strategic thinking, and you don't have any work experience, talk about how, you were in the chess club or whatever. So those are those kinds of, but also use those keywords: strategy, strategic, all the synonyms that go along with that, organized, forward thinking, all of that. And put that in the resume and your cover letter. So, and make sure they align, don't say one thing somewhere and another thing another place. So just share how you meet the requirements.
Yeah, Baba, so I'm making an appointment for the DMV. They only have available.
Swat Ali, we know about your DMV appointment now. Sorry.
The wonders of Zoom, right?
No worries. That was really funny. Okay, so I think Avi is going to ask some other questions that came up in the chat.
Hi. So we did have a couple of questions that came up in the chat while you were explaining a few things. The first one was, somebody had asked what font you personally recommend for making your resume and cover letter and all of that.
It's an interesting question. I'm a little bit of a taskmaster when it comes to like things being neat and organized and aligned. I have a bit of quote unquote OCD about it. So I use Arial or Arial Nova. There's two fonts, Arial or Arial Nova, and I use font size 11. I use 11 because I have a lot of stuff on my resume, and so, but if I didn't, I would probably use 12. But whether it's 11 or 12, it's up to you. But I would keep that consistent again across all of your work and your writing.
Thank you. That actually leads into the next question that somebody had, which was pretty much how bad is it to have a resume that is multiple pages? Is it really something you definitely want to avoid at all costs, or is it something that you can get away with depending? How do you feel about that?
I know that that's out there, but I think my personal opinion is that that's a myth. With the caveat being, if you have a lot of stuff in your resume and it's not relevant, then you just look like you don't know what you're doing. You look like you're writing about something you don't know about, and you're trying too hard. So I would say don't put filler in there. But if you actually have a lot to say and you have a point of view, absolutely put it in there. But again, don't put stuff there that they're not asking for, and don't provide information that they're not asking for. This is a little different. When I first started out, my resume was 1 to 2 pages. My resume right now is 9 pages. So it depends on how much you have to say and what your point of view is. And again, remember that if you're looking for an entry-level job and your resume is 10 pages, the AI is going to ignore all of it anyway, and systems are going to ignore all of that anyway if they're not relevant, and you probably won't get through. But if you happen to slip through the system and a human sees it and they see that you wrote about a bunch of stuff that's not relevant or that doesn't make any sense for the particular position, then that doesn't help you at all. So I would focus on the outcomes and the compatibility of you with the job versus the length of the resume.
Okay, thank you. So your suggestion would be mainly then, if I think I have a longer resume and I did want to include as much of it as possible because I saw it to be relevant, to keep the most relevant at the beginning and keep it organized in a way that it's still relevant and meets that bot process almost, but I can still give all my experience and information.
I would, yep. As long as it's relevant, yep, I absolutely would.
I have a question. So, when I was doing my resume, like when I was looking for a job and stuff, so I always let someone help me do my resume. And she always said to always keep it between 1 to 2 pages, because if it's more than that, I guess the interviewer like, oh wow, like she did so many jobs, or like, wow, she's this, she's that. So it's like a less chance of them hiring you if you have like a lot of information. Is that true?
I wouldn't say that's a rule. What I would say in response to that is if the job description says that they want something called progressive experience, that means that you should keep your experience and highlight your experience that's progressive. Progressive experience, for those that don't know, is you work in a bank, you start as a teller, then you move to an analyst, then you become an associate, then you become a manager, then you become a branch manager, all in the banking sector. And even if it's different companies, that's fine. But if it's in the same industry and the same type of job, that's considered progressive experience. So if you have progressive experience and that's what they're asking for, I would highlight that rather than your how many positions or how many jobs. So for example, if you worked in the banking sector and then you jumped out of the banking sector for a year and then you jump back in, I would highlight, in the front of the resume, the experience in the banking sector, and then be ready to explain why you left for a year or however long or whatever the gap was. But I would also put that in the back of the resume. And maybe you call it, I put in, when I was starting out, I put relevant experience right up on the top. And then, I put all the rest of the stuff that's not relevant in the back. And you can still make it chronological, but it's chronological according to relevant experience, and then chronological according to other experience. So again, you really shouldn't have two pages of achievements and for your first job, because
It's not my first job.
no, not you, but like in general, people generally, if they're looking for their first job, they wouldn't necessarily have more than 2 pages to fill out. That's probably a good rule of, not rule, but that's just kind of in my experience seeing lots of resumes across my career.
Now I have another question. So I'm looking for a job, but I've been working I'm as a teacher. So I'm working like teacher for children. So I'm working for like a private school, but I want to go into public schools, like a district school. And I tried to find that on like, Indeed, but you really can't find public schools on like those kind of jobs. So I've been trying to do like connect with the district school in Yonkers in Westchester County, but they never answer me back.
Yeah, so I mean, I would definitely keep using LinkedIn, Indeed to find those kinds of jobs. The government does post, cities and towns and governments in general, they do use LinkedIn and Indeed, and I think those are the top 2. So they do post for teacher jobs, but keep in mind that some of those jobs are civil service jobs. So you have to apply through for example, if it's in Yonkers, you might have to apply. I'm not sure if it's considered New York State or New York City as far as the Department of Education that governs it. So I would go directly to the state or the city or the town site to look at how to apply for those jobs, because the individual schools and districts are probably not managing that process. I would also look at for the teaching unions as a resource. The American Federation of Teachers, I think that's the big one. There's another one I think that's really big, and I don't think they necessarily post jobs, but they will talk about how you can look for those jobs. And eventually, I think you'll find out that, I don't know about Yonkers in specifically, but I do know that in New York City, you do need a teaching license that is certified by the state. So that would also be an avenue you can look into. As a matter of fact, that's the law. You have to have this certification in order to.
Yeah, I have all my certifications done already. So I've been done that from like a long time ago.
Great.
I was looking for now like a district school instead of a private.
Yeah, keep looking at the Department of Education websites, and just use all of those sources, the union websites, all of that.
She needs to take a civic exam.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. There might be, so I would look at, if in New York City, for example, you would go to and I just know this because I'm a New Yorker all my life. There's something called the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, otherwise known as DCAS. And they do administer a lot of different types of examinations. So that process is long. And like I said in the first slide, it could be months. So don't take it personally. It's just a lot of applicants. There's some bureaucracy associated with it. Some of the titles in civil service, they can take, and this is kind of an exception, but I've seen some of those titles, you apply and then maybe 18 months later, almost 2 years later, you get an answer. That's an exception, but it does happen. So keep looking, don't take it personally. And, apply to as many things as you can in that particular industry, if you want to be a teacher, for example. And I know that there's probably a pension plan and all that stuff that sometimes the benefits are what sometimes people are interested in. So that's why I would look at, the union websites, because they can guide you on, how to approach that.
So I believe V, so we should start to wrap up. I think V has one question, and then we can maybe combine Tristan's and Gendry's question. So V, would you like to go?
So the question that I have, I would say is kind of a two-parter. So first, just tips to make yourself stand out on LinkedIn, if possible. There are ways for you to make yourself stand out in your preferred ways on LinkedIn. And then the second part was just to be how to be more comfortable in conveying those little things about yourself and tips on how to speak more comfortably to people in general and in public, as you just did today so well.
Thank you. I would say, as far as the LinkedIn profile, let your experience and achievements speak for themselves. So make sure to write, the outcomes, the things that you've accomplished, whether or not, it's in high school, in college, or whatever it is, even if it's just those. Make sure those really stand out in your writing on the profile. Again, don't go into, the hows and the whys and all of that. Just list, your achievements. What awards did you win? If you played a sport, did you win any trophies? All of those kinds of things. But the second thing I would add to that is specifically more and more, the best thing to do to stand out is to write an article about what you're trying to apply for. And that's free. You can do that on LinkedIn. You can, blog it on LinkedIn, and then you can attach what you write onto your LinkedIn profile. So if somebody goes to, and also, you'll have that writing for you just in case, you want to give that to an employer if you get through the screening. But don't attach it to your resume unless they're asking for writing samples again. So, but you can write a LinkedIn article. It looks professional. You can attach it to your profile and write it. And if you have a lot of those, I think that's a really, really good value add for your profile that will make it stand out.
I have a question.
Is that Rose?
Yeah, it's me.
Yeah. Hi, Rose.
Yeah, hi, Professor. So I don't know if I did understand it well. What I want to ask Mr. Shaw about the be more generic, and that the machine with the resume. Do machines have credential to select the right candidate? The first screening go through maybe computer, I don't know, machine of resumes. I think he said it in number 2 or 3. Be generic on the resume when you write, and maybe being generic, it may be superficial and change the nature of your experience. I don't know.
Yeah, don't write anything generic. I would tailor your resume, customize it to the particular industry or type of job. And you can use that as a template, but I wouldn't write anything generic because you probably won't get past the screening tools that employers use. But if you're, trying to apply for 10, 20, 30, 50 jobs, which I also would recommend to apply to as many jobs as you can. I would try to group those jobs into similar kinds of categories so that you can use your writing as a template, but they have to be obviously different from each other.
You answered my question. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Sure.
All right, so I'd like to ask this last question. It's from Gendry, speed round. Tips to introduce yourself to someone in the industry you want to work at.
You mean personally? What I mean, essentially, if you're meeting someone, you've gotten through the screening. What I would say is that, you know, when you do meet someone in person, have some EQ, emotional intelligence. You know, you have to, you know, practice kind of reading the room, because some people, you know, I may be like, and maybe I'm different, this is just my personal opinion, but, you know, I don't necessarily want to shake someone's hand. So whether I'm being interviewed or I'm interviewing, I don't necessarily want to do that, particularly in this, you know, current state of a pandemic. So I would just read the room. If the person sticks out their hand, and you feel comfortable shaking their hand, do that. But, you know, don't assume that that's what they want to do. Also, you know, be polite, be pleasant, and follow context clues. If they, for example, use your first name, use their first name. So I would just listen and try to be sensitive and have some emotional intelligence about who you're meeting and what the context is.
Perfect. Yeah, context is everything. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Choi.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
It was wonderful having you here.
Caprioli.
Come back again.
We're reading the room.
Come back.
All right. Well, come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, come back whenever.
Yeah.
We really.
Absolutely.
And I do have the recording. I plan to just share it with this class, and then you and I can talk about possibly sharing it with other classes. But thank you again, and have a wonderful day.
Good luck, everybody. Enjoy the rest of
Thank
your
you.
week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right. So we just have a minute to kind of unpack. I thought that was very useful. What initial thoughts? You can say them out loud or put it in the chat.